Hey, Meg! What are you drawing? I'm drawing a dog!
I'm drawing the pyramid.
The what?
It's a weird, crazy alien dimension. The white goes on forever. You can get lost in all that white.
Take my cassette player.
Control is a third-person, single-player action blockbuster made by Remedy Entertainment, developers of Alan Wake, Quantum Break, and Max Payne. It's a super stylish, fast-paced sci-fi horror action-adventure that digs deep into MK Ultra-like conspiracies. This review will break down my opinions on this game, what I think of its gameplay, the story, and its presentation, and it will contain spoilers. So without any further ado, let's get into the story. The story of Control is confusing, convoluted, controversial, but it's definitely cool. The story starts with the protagonist, Jesse Faden, arriving at the Oldest House, which is the HQ of the Federal Bureau of Control, to search for her brother Dylan. Upon coming to the FBC, Jesse finds out the original director, Zachariah Trench, has committed suicide, as well as finds out the entire bureau has been taken over by the Hiss, an evil force that takes control over other agents and guards in the FBC. The main story you play has you figuring out what exactly happened to Trench, how the Hiss has taken over, and where your brother Dylan is. There are many other questions you aim to answer throughout the game's side missions, which help to build the lore around the world. So is the story good? Is it compelling enough to keep you playing? For me, it really was. There is no doubt that the story is convoluted and sometimes hard to follow, especially if you don't want to read the hundreds of quote-unquote kind of boring lore strewn about the world. Prime candidates, AWEs or altered world events, Polaris, the Hedron, HRAs, and objects of power, all words when said individually are almost overwhelming, but are pillars to the game's story and its world.
I'm Dr. Casper Darling, head of research. Somebody thought this video would make for great internal communications.
But these concepts offer up something to look into. I found myself digging through missions just to get lore on aspects like what is the Ocean View Hotel and what was Darling's thoughts throughout these events. They string together really well and paint a fun but fucked up picture to strive toward.
I'm close to them, in a way.
I can't tell if that's creepy or normal here.
What also really helps the story are the great characters, from Jessie, the strong woman protagonist who doesn't take shit from anyone, to Dylan, the fucked up little brother whose possession makes some truly disturbing scenes, to Trench, whose silhouette appears from the grave to guide you and sometimes mock you throughout your journey, to the charming janitor whose role is more like a Morgan Freeman character, to the bubbly Emily Pope who fucking loves data. There aren't Breaking Bad levels of deep, but deep enough to enjoy. And these characters, their interactions, and their acting are fascinating enough to care about and also make the game's playtime feel even shorter. And that's my biggest complaint. I did enjoy the story quite a bit actually. I thought it was intriguing enough to explore all the lore, collecting and reading every file I found and watching every slide in the world. I think Remedy did a wonderful job of crafting a unique action sci-fi story that touches upon the conspirator inside myself, but I wish it was a bit longer. One of my biggest complaints to this game is how short it is. I got through the main game story in a quick 10 hours.
Can't be lifted as long as any trace of it remains.
Game's only about like 10 hours long.
And that's from dying a fair amount, watching every single cutscene, exploring all dialogue options, and reading all the lore included in that playtime. If you picked up the game's combat quickly and didn't care too much for the lore, I can see the main story being complete in around 6 to 7 hours. This is a bit embarrassing, but I think it comes from the criticism from the previous titles like Alan Wake, which was criticized for being a bit too drawn out when it could have told its story in the same amount of time as Control. Overall though, it was a fun blockbuster to uncover on a rainy weekend. In terms of actual Control, well, Control does it well. Moving Jessie felt very, very fluid. I think they paid extra attention to this because if Control didn't control well, that would be quite embarrassing. Next, I want to dig into gameplay. Essentially, Control is built around these powers you equip and your weapon. Your gun, the service weapon, takes 5 different forms that you uncover as you progress and allows you to equip any 2 at a time. These go from the standard pistol to the shotgun to the sniper to the submachine gun to the rocket launcher. Each form feels vastly different and each offer a different style of play. Oh yeah, and don't worry about ammo. Your weapons are energy based and recharge rather than reload. My favorite combo was the Pierce, which is the sniper, paired up with the standard pistol. This allowed me to rack in big damage from afar, keeping my distance and utilize my powers and pistol to finish them off. You could easily go the other route and play more close quarters combat style. What I also enjoyed was the power-ups you found along the world. This gives upgrades to each of your weapons' forms, such as close the choke on the shotgun, creating a tighter blast from further away, or increasing your rate of fire on your submachine gun. These were vital to finding my right combo to complement my powers. And speaking of which, you're also given 5 different powers. The throw, where you pick up whatever in the world and throw it at the enemy. The shield, the dash, the seize, which allows you to possess an enemy, allowing them to fight for you, and the levitation, which is basically flying. You'll only start with one and uncover the others later on, with levitation being uncovered quite late in the game. What's great about the powers is that they're always equipped once you obtain them and are only hindered by your power meter, which acts like your mana. Don't worry, it recharges rather quickly like your weapons. These powers are what make you feel powerful. As you get better, stringing together combos with your different powers and weapons becomes so satisfying and adds another aspect to the game to keep you enthralled. I loved upgrading my throw till I got to the point where I could throw almost anything at the enemy, doing massive AoE damage, which I would then finish off with my pierce shot from afar. I also enjoyed levitating above the battlefield, throwing debris everywhere and possessing any enemy low on health to do my bidding. Again, it's really up to you on how you want to tackle these battles. Myself, I enjoyed the mass destruction. And that leads me to talk about one aspect of the game that added to its overall impressive nature. In Control, almost everything is able to be destroyed, picked up, thrown, and destroyed again. Taking an enemy and throwing them through a window or a pillar, crushing everything around it and everyone under it, then pulling that dead enemy out of the debris only to throw it at another enemy, yeah, it feels good. It was really impressive to see just how much in the game was destructible and had physics, and to be honest, it felt like everything. The enemies, this was a bit disappointing. They're fun to shoot and throw around, but there isn't much variety. Maybe about 5 to 6 constant enemies, with a few more that are more like mini bosses and a few actual bosses. Not only that, but they're also not very smart. You won't see any sort of tactics or even self-preservation. Just another slog of mindless enemies at your disposal. Only a handful of times I felt actually challenged by them. And that leads to my last gameplay point, difficulty. This game is quite easy. If you spend the time to upgrade your weapons and powers, by the end of the game, you're so far overpowered you will rarely die or even be challenged. It's a shame really because this compounds the short playtime. I would have loved a bit more attention to detail in the enemy types, making them have a bit more variety, better AI, and I also wish they had some type of backstory. They're nothing more than a toy in a sandbox that you do as you wish with them. While it can be fun, it's just not challenging. Finally, I want to talk about the best part of this game. Its presentation. Remedy uses its setting, sound design, and its cinematography to not only build its weird world around you, but enthrall you in it. The oldest house looks like this cold, modern, large corporation at first with large lobbies and wings with no one in them. But as you drive through and dig deeper, its more darker, sinister features appear, and damn, I love it. The feeling Remedy is able to pull from you, one that is uneasy, slightly disturbed, yet weirdly confident, nails exactly what Jesse would be feeling traversing through this. The sound design is excellent. First off, the voice acting is phenomenal. Courtney Hope as Jesse is perfect, but Sean Dury really steals the show.
I'd like to tell you about a dream I had last night.
Off to a good start.
The weapons and powers sound great. The blast of the Pierce never gets old. And the sound of each different material hitting an enemy's head is consistent with what it would sound like in real life. And impressive attention to detail. The music or lack thereof works. Because of the game's setting, a traditional soundtrack wouldn't really work. But when the music does come in, it's fast, it's powerful, and it's ultimately fitting. And all the odd, nightmarish scenes and ambiance are done very well. Nothing sounds cheesy or out of place or forced, which is exactly what you want from sound design. The cinematography is certainly a highlight for me. There is one scene with Jesse and Dylan that takes this disturbing turn, and the game's cinematography complements it perfectly. I actually don't think I've seen cinematography done in a game this way before. It's very similar to Mr. Robot, with its sharp cuts, odd framing, and deep meaning behind each shot. To Remedy, I salute you. Because it doesn't come across forced or cheesy, it works, and again, it adds to this disturbing foundation Remedy has built to place you on. Getting technical, the game's graphical quality is top tier. I was playing on a PC, GTX 1080 Ti, and i7 9700K. So while I was able to push the game a bit harder than most consoles, I had to sit at medium to high settings to maintain 60 frames per second. I also wasn't able to take full potential of the RTX ray tracing features. But even without that, the game looked and played great. Flying around large areas with dozens of enemies around, chucking them through walls with falling debris and its physics everywhere with reflections on every surface, all while streaming, and really not much of a hitch. And in terms of lighting, volumetric lighting, screen space reflections, and a light film grain give the game an even more refined veneer. That said, it is taxing. If you want to play this game at 60 frames per second on its full ultra settings with ray tracing, you're going to need a monster of a rig. Finally, Control by Remedy is a great game. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with it. It's fucked up and weird yet enthralling story, its compelling characters and voice acting, its fun and fluid combat, and its amazing cinematography, sound design, and graphical fidelity, all combined to make for a game that I was completely engorged in and wanted to keep playing. Unfortunately, with a very short 10-hour playtime and not too much variety with enemy types or weaponry, it needs to bring a lot more to the table. I think the message overall is that we need to give Remedy Entertainment more money. A lot more. I'd like to know what they could do with a gigantic EA-like budget. I loved Max Payne and Alan Wake, and I love how Remedy is using capital to hire real actors and great voice acting. But I also would love to see a lot more from them. Bigger worlds, more characters, more lore, more attention to detail, more great cinematography. And if publishers are worried about their games being adult or weird, just look at Kojima. The massive hype around Death Stranding is a telltale sign that gamers crave unique games with big headliners on the cover. But that's really my critique on this game, and I can't wait to see what else becomes of this game or IP and what else Remedy does.